Hey everyone, with the Collab event nearing its end, I thought it'd be fun to dive in a bit and cover the overall story. I do want to focus on getting more lore videos out, so let's have a little fun with the Collab story, shall we? Now I do want to get a few things out of the way firsthand. The main thing being that the collabs generally don't have any major impact in Azur overall story. Now, there may be a few off-the-cuff comments that might have some significance, but the majority of things will not really contribute anyway at all. That said, this is also a spoiler warning for those of you who would like to read it first before you watch this video. Let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we? Now, we are first greeted by Kala Ideas, as she's woken up by the sound of a battle nearby. Once she quickly collects herself, she realizes she's not in her usual home. Heck, she's not even anywhere she remotely recognizes. She begins to wonder how she got here. Is she half asleep or simply dreaming? Did the work of an alchemist manage to whisk her away into another dimension? Or did the infamous Truck-kun claim another one? Before she's able to ponder more about how she came to this place, everyone's favorite collab siren, Purity, makes her presence known. It's here where Purity fills her in about her current situation. It appears that Tester has plans to bring Kala and 5 others into this world. For what reasons? Well, your guess is just as good as mine. In an attempt to ruin Tester's plans, Purity brought Kala here earlier than the others and is planning to take out Tester in order to prevent anything from ever happening. Despite all this information, Kala holds a don't care, didn't ask stance and just wants to be sent back home. Unfortunately, Purity tells her that she has to defeat Tester as well as make the place safe for the other 5 first in order for her to be able to send her home. Realizing that she doesn't really have much of a choice, Kala decides to help Purity in her plans to stop Tester from doing whatever it was she was planning to do. It is at this point I do want to quickly mention, this collab has 2 arcs to it. The first arc is events surrounding Kala and Purity, while the other will focus with Azur and the remaining 5 girls in this collab. Rather than bounce back and forth between the 2 arcs as they appear in the story and give a little bit of a headache, I'm going to go ahead and handle them one by one. So let's go ahead and continue with Kala and Purity here. Now a little bit of time passes and we learn that Purity has assembled a rigging for Kala to use to aid in their quest to take out Tester. However, Purity probably should have explained how the riggings worked first, since Kala kinda ended up unknowingly pointing her guns at her. After a short panic attack, Purity finally lets Kala in on her master plan to take down Tester. She was going to have Kala lead Purity's own fleet and keep Tester distracted in battle while, well, yeah. Later we find Purity to be in high spirits because her plan went well and they have control of the realm now. However, before Kala can be sent back, Purity begins to change the environment of this realm to be safer for the other 5 when they arrive. She decides to make the realm full of ruins for the 5 of them to explore and do a little bit of minor work in order for them to be able to return home. It seems that not every bit of her siren side has changed with her now being Purity, as she justifies this by saying, "So if we leave without doing anything, they're just going to arrive at an empty patch of water with a portal sitting in the middle of it. That's too boring. They're going to another world for goodness sake. So I'm thinking, how about we make some safe ruins for them but to explore before sending them off?" I mean, we still have to have some sort of story with this collab. It's not like people are going to be hitting the skip button on this story at all. Anyway, as they begin to build the realm, Purity has Kala look over the land of beginning and give her thoughts on the monument's writing as well as asking her about one of the islands. Kala, being rather blunt, says that the writing comes off as if written by a lunatic. Purity, not being too fond of the answer, just manages to shake it off and ask Kala if she would be fine with one of the islands looking like her homeworld in its former glory. Kala then asks if the world that she is creating is simply a fake, to which Purity answers by saying, "No, it's a highly faithful replica." What's a replica, Purity? Anyway, with that answer, Kala just prefers her to keep the forest she has now. Purity also planned to make the Felucia the enemies here, but is told by Kala that they are repelled by water, to which Purity just says whatever and just makes mass-produced ships inspired by them instead. What's interesting about this arc is that we get to see 2 sides of this particular story, kind of like we're a Dungeons & Dragons DM, so to speak. That said, most of the scenes from these two will be much shorter from here on out and very similar to each other because it's basically them building the rest of the islands. To quickly summarize here, as they move to the Castle of Strife, Collab suggests mostly leaving it as it is, to which Purity agrees and has the Enforcer simply clean it a bit just to make it a little bit safer for the other 5. They run into a bit of a situation where Purity wants the Central Foundation to be defended long enough with enough deterrent to keep them from disobeying the monument. Collab honestly believes though that it would do the exact opposite of what she intends, at which point Purity just says screw it and doubles the number of defenses and thinks that will be all that she needs to do. Purity also contemplates where to put the control device for the Mirror Sea. She doesn't want to just leave it in the Central Foundation, but rather, well, in a random hole she just made. Collab suggests that they may end up exploring it and thereby destroying it before realizing what it was. With that in mind, Purity decides to make a dungeon under the water, believing they'll just explore that and then leave, ignoring the device. She plans to leave behind a submarine, a map, and a dungeon underwater for them to explore. With all the locations set up, Purity decides to ask Collab if she'd like to stay with her and help her in her quest to stop Tester. Collab unfortunately mentions that she has her own duties to attend to, being the leader of her own clan, but she was interested in the badge, probably I would assume as a keepsake. Sadly, Purity mentions that she cannot bring anything back with her and will only be able to keep the power she has now if she were to stay with her. Collab still declines and goes to ask about other things regarding time between the two dimensions. Purity simply responds that the time between the two is definitely different and that maybe at most minutes have passed in her original world, and she won't have to worry about anything. With those concerns relieved, Collab wishes Purity well and goes about her way. Collab's words somehow managed to get Purity flustered, which is, well, it's something I never thought I'd see happen for a siren. Anyway, with that particular arc closed, we can move on to the main one. For that, we'll start with one of the other 5, Rysalind Stout, or Ryza, as she begins an entire monologue about herself and her current circumstances of her being brought into Azulane's world. After saying ordinary a lot, and I mean a lot, Ryza is actually describing everything to 2 of Azulane's own, Bristol and Alfredo Oriani. Both of them aren't really sure why Ryza's here, but both have their own perpetrators for this particular situation. Alfredo believes the sirens, whereas Bristol simply believes Cthulhu was involved. Excuse me, what? What? Despite this disagreement, both of them briefly fill in Ryza about sirens and learn that Ryza's an alchemist, but they both don't really know what that means she's capable of. As time passes, more and more of the 5 girls show up along with a few other Azulane girls that were protecting and escorting them. Shimikaze was watching over Claudia, while Formidable was with Patricia. The 3 girls quickly exchange pleasantries but are interrupted over the sound of cannon fire. Shimikaze identifies it to be Suruga's own cannons, and both her and Formidable head out to support her. However, Suruga was actually finishing off some enemies she was dealing with while protecting the last 2 girls of this particular collab, Seri Glaus and Lila Dosiris. Shimikaze and Formidable finally arrived to help, but realized that Suruga actually had it all under control. As they return to the rest of the group, Lila and Seri are caught up with the rest of the girls about their current situation. Seri mentioned that the enemy Suruga was fighting had the aura of the Felucia, which is an enemy from Ryza's world. I don't know much about the lore of that particular game, so I can't really elaborate any further than that. The only other thing that is known is that given that the Felucia hate water, it's clear that these mass-produced enemies were just simply inspired by the Felucia. Which, granted, this is not the first time sirens have ever replicated certain themes for their own purposes. Daedalian Hymn is actually a very good example of this. The group decides that it will take advantage of the lull time and get a little bit of rest before continuing to look into their situation more. After getting a decent amount of rest, Formidable begins to survey the area and notes that there are 4 main islands she can see. The Northern Island, aka the Central Foundation, the island to the west, aka the Underworld Grove, the island to the east, aka the Castle of Strife, and their current island called the Land of Beginnings. I know you all see the last area in the bottom left of the map, and that is the desolate capital, but they did not see that immediately. They did, however, know of its existence because of a monument on the current island they're on, the Land of Beginnings. The monument's full writing says the following: O travelers from far-off lands, heed these words I impart to thee. Thou art in the Land of Beginnings, thy luminous guidepost it shall be. Westwards lay the Underworld Grove, an illusion born from memories. Eastward lay the Castle of Strife, where the brutal truth lay buried. Southwards lay the desolate capital, abound in treasure among loam. Northwards lie the central foundation, thy way of returning home. Gather the hidden recipes, and great power shall thee find. Then breach the towering barrier with all 4 keys combined. Leverage thy wits, and upon thee shall be conferred a prize. Disregard my words, and all that awaits is thy demise. Because the monument mentioned a southern region, both Alfredo and Formidable did find it rather odd that it was not visible, but they speculated that it was hidden by Siren tech. However, thanks to the monument, they know they need to collect recipes and keys and make it to the central foundation in order to be able to go home. Bristol and Alfredo unfortunately do end up butting heads at the beginning, as they had to figure out where to go first. However, Shimakaze reminds them that they all kind of wanted to see Rise's alchemy in action. Claudia does suggest a demonstration, but Rise states that she needs to collect ingredients first in order to do so. The group then proceeds to collect a variety of ingredients from plants, rocks, water, and even a spider for its webs. With this, Ryza creates a red neutralizer and gets a variety of reactions to it. Formidable is just simply confused, Bristol is amazed, and Alfredo is unable to process how the whole thing came out of the cauldron pre-bottled. Alfredo, it's better if you don't ask questions. Anyway, Ryza mentioned a recipe that Claudia managed to find while they were scavenging the area for these ingredients and starts working on it. It's right here where Suruga brings up her own concerns about everything being a little bit too convenient for her liking. From the cauldron just being there, to the monument telling them what to do, to the recipes, materials, and keys just being everywhere. Everything just kind of concerned her and made her think that they were falling into a trap. However, she doesn't realize that Purity is the one running the show here. Before the conversation can really take off though, the cauldron erupts with a bright light and a rigging appears around Ryza. Suruga realizes she can't do much about what has happened, and just advises everyone to be careful. After some short practice and creating some ammo for Ryza, they all decide it's best to go to the Underworld Grove since it might be a familiar place for them. It's here we learn that the Orin people called the Underworld their home, and that both Leela and Seri are Orin. They also provide a short history about their homeland, how Alchemist stole resources from there, and when everything was taken, the Felucia attacked and turned the Underworld into a wasteland. The Orin people blamed all of it on the Alchemists, and actually ended up hating a good majority of them. Ryza thankfully is a unique exception to this, as she's been known to use her alchemy for good, and both Seri and Leela trust her. After that short background talk there, they continue through the island, and do encounter a few enemies that they have quick fights with. Both Shimakaze and Suruga note that the enemies are a bit tougher than Mark III Sirens, and assume it to be thanks to upgrades from data of the Felucia. Suruga then briefly explains the general structure of the Sirens, in which Leela notes the similarities of them to the Felucia. If the commander is taken out, the army is weakened, but if the queen is eliminated, the army collapses. As they continue, Seri examines some of the plant life and notes that none of it is real, yet Ryza says she seems to be able to use it for alchemy. I guess for them, the concept of everything being a simulation might be a little bit hard for them to grasp. Thankfully, it does not take long for them to find the next key and recipe, and they return home to fabricate the riggings for both Leela and Seri. With their riggings created, they then make their way to the Castle of Strife to find the brutal truth they buried. Before they set off though, Bristol and Alfredo decide to have a competition to find the truth first, to which both Shimakaze and Ryza decide to join in as well. They all race off to get there, ignoring Suruga's plea to wait. As they arrive, the group notices the sky changes color and realizes that the moment they cross the bridge is when this happens. Suruga really doesn't understand why this is happening. To be completely honest, Suruga, it's because Purity. She does whatever she wants to do. Anyway, as they make their way into the Castle of Strife, they note that the place looks like the aftermath of a horrible battle. There is some concern about the source of this damage and destruction because it was not them that caused it. Guess that's another truth for them to discover. As they continue to explore the area, they very quickly learn that some of the chests in the area are trapped. They've only really experienced smoke traps, but Suruga worries about deadlier variants at this point. Thankfully, Bristol has her Data 857 robot take care of this, as it's able to scan the chests and see if they are trapped or not. The group decides to let Bristol and her robot handle this while they go and explore elsewhere. After some time, Bristol manages to come back with just the key. However, Sari and Lila have managed to find the actual rigging recipe. Both of them had sensed an Oran presence earlier and investigated it only to find the recipe instead. They think it's kind of impossible for the Oran to have met with the Sirens, but believe that they were incorporated somehow. Though in reality, we know it had to be Kala Ideas, as the last cutscene in this entire event is a conversation between Kala and Purity, in which Purity has Kala go and spread out the recipes, keys, and materials. Now that they have their items, they head back to their camp and ponder what had happened here. Bristol has a theory that she believes to be the answer. Then that is that it believes that this place used to be a Siren base, but was taken out by a meteorite that crash landed. She mentions that the meteorite is the reason the South Island is just completely gone. It's a plausible theory at first, but the group doesn't really know how the Oran tie into this. Bristol believes that they were forced into the world after the meteorite crashed, and then proceeded to take out their frustrations and anger on the Sirens and defeat them. Most of the group, though, doesn't believe this because it kind of feels like you need riggings to defeat the Sirens in the first place, and at that point as well, the recipes, monuments, keys, all that stuff just seems very odd to be in existence for this kind of situation. With that, the group puts the theory aside and makes their way home to create Patricia's rigging. With Patricia's rigging finally finished, they don't know what to do because they kind of think the last island is just gone. They decide to try with their riggings to brute force their way to the central foundation, though this idea turned out to be a really bad one, considering how strong the defenses of that particular area were. They decide to quickly retreat and plan out their next move. As they start exploring around the starting area more, Bristol comes across a submarine, and Formidable and her investigated a bit to find that it is in working shape and that there's a topology map that reveals that the last island is actually on the seafloor. All of them will have to ride the submarine to explore this last ruins. They did manage to find a map for the ruins, but in reality it was probably the least helpful thing for them, given that it did not really differentiate between each of the floors. This is a 2D map that was for a 3-dimensional dungeon. Alfredo then has a really silly idea and asks Formidable if she could ride her planes. I'm just gonna quote Formidable here as I kinda want her sass to do the work for us here. Give me some planes made from unobtainium and I'm sure they'll be durable enough to hold your weight. Formidable doesn't think that this is a very, very good idea, but Alfredo does not relent on this idea and asks Ryza if she could potentially make a rope durable enough to support her. To which Ryza actually manages to create it. With no other options currently, the group gives Alfredo's idea a shot, though Shibakaze and Bristol tag along. Formidable tells them to be careful and don't do something as stupid as firing their weapons while they're in the air. Honestly, that'd be kind of a funny thing though. Despite the clear risks of this particular idea, the group actually manages to find the last key and the final recipe for rigging for Claudia. They return back to the camp so that they can finally give poor Claudia her rigging. She feels like the Z23 of this group. Ironblood mains, please don't re at me. With the riggings done, Ryza asks Formidable to borrow her plane so Claudia and her can ride it around. I'm going to assume this is some kind of a pairing or something. Bottom line is the group kind of unwinds a little bit before they make their way to the central foundation. Speaking of which, Ryza realizes that what she can do with the 4 keys and ends up actually making a key card with them. She also tells Formidable that she wishes she could keep the cauldron, but doesn't want to be lumbering about the battlefield with it. The sheer use of the word lumbering surprises Formidable a bit, but after collecting herself, she then shows Ryza that she can actually pack it up with her. After breaching the Central Foundation's barrier, they decide to try and explore a bit for treasure, but end up only finding enemies. As they fight their way around the place, they end up running into a really tough boss-type enemy, which took most of them by surprise given how easy the rest of them were. After defeating it though, they arrived at the teleporter back to Ryza's world. Sadly, it seems like they weren't able to actually get it going as it seemed like it was broken. Ryza does mention that she might be able to fix it, but might need a little bit more information about the Sirens to do so. Formidable then offers Ryza and her group the ability to come with them to their port for that particular information, and the whole group agrees to head to Ozerlane's port. Now, there is one last final dialogue for this particular event, and it's actually between Cullah and Purity. I didn't fully include it because I kind of felt it was more unique. And there's really only one thing that I wanted to point from this that I thought was rather clever, and it was a line from Purity. Creating a rigging takes more than just a wisdom cube. You need special supplementary items too. so they're quite similar in a sense. I'll just make it look like a cauldron so nobody can really tell the difference. Looks like that cauldron was more than just simply a cauldron. Anyway, that's the entire story of this event. How did you guys feel about it? I actually liked the two different arcs here that gave both perspectives. It's not something I was expecting, but it was definitely something that I can say I did enjoy for sure. That said, I'm looking forward to getting into more lore soon, as I'm more than sure we have a pretty big event coming up soon. Until then, on whether you're a regular viewer or patron supporting the channel on Patreon, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all again real soon.